Friends, good evening. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. We continue speaking about the 5 causes of illness. And today we are covering 2 specific causes. One of them is called the entity of nature. The other one is called the entity of God. This has to do with how balanced is your energy and the elements of karma that apply to you in life. So as we are doing this practice, this lesson today, our scope today is going to lead us into understanding how illnesses and diseases are both energetic and biological in nature, but how is it that they can also be rooted in a spiritual origin? If we could say morality, how could they be rooted in a moral origin? And this is because in esoteric medicine, illness is not seen as something that happens just physically. It is not just a simple ailment of the body. It is understood that it is the result of multiple dimensions interacting with each other. And so we have these 5 different causes. This lesson is going to be focusing on the entity of God. This is rooted in the divine law, and the entity of nature that is rooted, of course, in nature and the nature of your organism. And we have to focus on it like that because our physical body has an energetic foundation. That energetic foundation, we find it within the nervous system because it is through the nervous system that we see the flow of all of the vital energy. For all purposes, the nervous system in our body is the same as the electrical distribution is in your house, as the power grid is for your city. But our nervous system is responsible for different things. For example, the cerebrospinal system. This is the one that contains the spinal cord, the cerebellum, the brain. This central nervous system, this is the seat of the innermost. This is that throne of the Holy Spirit that exists within each and every one of us. But there is also the sympathetic system. And the sympathetic system is the seat of the astral body. So within our nervous system, we find the throne of our being, and we also find the seat of the astral body. But our physical body does not just exist by itself. Our physical body has an inferior part, which is this dense substance, and it also has a more subtle, superior aspect. That superior aspect of the physical body is the ethereal body. And our physicality will become ill when the corresponding aspect of the ethereal body has become ill. And that is because our ethereal body is an exact duplicate of our physical body. As a matter of fact, our ethereal body is the foundation of all the organic and chemical processes that take place within the body itself. It is a regulator of health. And this means that every organ that we have in our physical body becomes ill when its ethereal counterpart has become ill. If the ethereal aspect of your heart has become affected, eventually, the physical heart is going to reflect the same problem. If there are problems happening within the ethereal aspect of, for example, your kidneys or your adrenal glands or your thyroid, in the physical body, we will see, as a reflective action, the same consequences. So what happens? When we want to heal the physical aspect, we must focus on healing the ethereal aspect. You fix the ethereal one, the physical becomes fixed. Every organ of the physical body responds in this very same way. But the ethereal body is not just that ghost-like formation identical to the physical body. That ethereal body is made of 4 distinct ethers that empower it to manage all of the functions of the physicality. And those 4 ethers that make up the ethereal body are the chemical, the life ether, the luminous, and the reflective ether. Chemical, life, luminous, and reflective. The chemical ether, that is the one responsible for all of the chemical reactions and all of the chemical transactions that happen within the physicality. Everything that has to do with those electrical transfers, that ether regulates that. But then we have the biological ether, this life ether. This is the one responsible for regulating the biochemical and the physiological processes that are associated with the reproduction of the species. These 2 ethers, the chemical and the biological or the life ether, these are considered 2 inferior ethers. They are fundamental for the physical body to work. But then we have the luminous and the reflective ether. These are 2 superior ethers that we must learn to work with. Because the luminous ether is the one that has anything and everything to do with our ability to perceive light, heat, color, and sound. And the reflective ether is the one that has to do with perceptions. Not only those of the senses, but those of the superior senses of the body as well. Those superior senses that are associated with those 7 main chakras that exist along our spine. And the reflective ether is also responsible for the processes of thought. So anything that has to do with the intellectual center, the reflective ether influences it. But remember, we also have a superior intellectual center. That is the one within our head that the innermost will use to be able to communicate as much as the superior emotional center that also exists in the head. So the luminous and the reflective allow for the function of these superior centers as well. In these ethers, the superior soul, that one that has been worked through the work in the flaming forge of Vulcan, will eventually find its expression. And as part of those expressions, of those many distinct and different parts of the being, there is something that we carry within called the maiden of our memories. The maiden of memories, being one of the many different parts of our being, is a mediator. It is responsible of linking the senses of the physical brain and the ultra-sensitive senses that the body is capable of. Those ultra-sensitive senses that correspond to the astral body. And in a way, our maiden of memories is like the repository of memories. It is like that agent that manages transferring memories from the senses of the physical brain into the memory that can be the memory of the esoteric work. The function of the maiden of our memories as part of the ethereal body is tremendously important, particularly when we can unfold in our astral body. Because when you can bring those memories, those astral experiences, those memories from those experiences into the physicality, you are aiding into the awakening of the consciousness. You're aware of what happened there. You can see the effect that is going to manifest here. For example, as you perceive your dreams, as you start interpreting your dreams, we know that the flow of creation descends from the realm of causation into the realm of the mind, into the astral plane, into the realm of vitality, or the ethereal plane, and then they crystallize in the physicality. So as you start interpreting your dreams, you can see the symbols, the signals, the messages there, and one day, 2 days after, you can start seeing how those messages, how those warnings, how that information crystallizes in the physical plane. So it is of tremendous importance for us to be able to work with this aspect of our being that is the maiden of memories. But it so happens that some people cannot remember their astral experiences. Some people wake up, they say, I don't dream. Yes, you do. It is just that you're not remembering it. Many instances, you have a clear, vivid image of your dream the moment that you open your eyes, and as soon as you move a little bit to get out of bed, it gets erased. Well, there's a fix for that. But in the case of people who cannot remember their dreams, they cannot remember their astral experiences. What is actually happening? What happens is that the brain has a very fine tissue. This very fine membrane is the physical vehicle of those astral memories. And when that tissue becomes damaged, well, the memories become impossible to recall. And we're so fortunate that something can be done about it. The damage can be remedied by the masters of universal medicine. We spoke earlier about the temple of Alden. So we can always ask of our divine being to invoke the help of the masters of universal medicine, whether it is Galeno, Harpocrates, Hermes Trismegistus, Paracelsus, Angel Adonai, Archangel Raphael, to invoke any one of them and ask of them to help us by fixing, correcting whatever damage has happened to this fine, delicate tissue within our brain. So remember, if you cannot remember your astral experiences, invoke via your innermost the masters of universal medicine so that they can take your ethereal body into the temple of Alden, and right then and there they can subjugate that ethereal body to what we would consider here some sort of surgical operation. After this operation, you will be able to go through your astral experiences and bring back those memories into the physicality. And asking for this help is very simple. As you find yourself in the predisposition to sit and meditate with your body fully relaxed, relax your body, invoke of your divine being by saying, Divine Father, Father of mine. We ask of you to present yourself at the heart temple of Alden, at the temple of universal medicine. And once there, do the salutations at the door of the temple, walk into the temple and invoke the help of the masters of universal medicine. And you can invoke any one of the masters, Archangel Raphael, Hermes Trismegistus, Paracelsus. Say, come, come, come in the name of the Christ, by the power of Christ, by the love of Christ. And use that objective imagination, use that willpower to see you there. And as you're there, ask for the help that you need. Divine Master, we are here humbly at your presence, asking if it is the will of the law for you to exercise the necessary medical procedures in my ethereal body so that we can bring those memories from the astral plane into that memory of the esoteric work. We ask of this in the name of the Christ, by the power of Christ, by the love of Christ. Amen. Want to make it better? That moment, sing the mantra Aum 3 times. That's how you do it. But there's also something that you can start doing now. Ask for that help. But between now and the day that you decide to do so, as you make yourself ready to go to sleep at night, invoke of your innermost. Divine Father, you are my true being, you who are my eternal God. We ask of you with our heart and our soul to remove our maiden of memories from my ethereal body. Remove her from my ethereal body so that when the astral body comes back in, that those memories are not lost when I return to my body. You can do that. And after you invoke your innermost as part of your prayer, and you ask, please remove our maiden of memories from our ethereal body so that when we come back into the physicality, that those memories are not lost. At that moment, start singing the mantra La Ras. That mantra, you sing it mentally. La. And as you inhale again, Ras. Chant that mantra mentally and make it a rhythmic, musical expression as you are breathing. And what's going to happen? This mantra is going to help you unfold in your astral body. As you start watching closely that transition between wakefulness and sleep, you will notice that moment in which you are right there in the middle. Just get up. Get up. Same way that you get up in the morning. Just get up. And while you're in your room, just leap with the intent of floating. You will find yourself in the astral plane. At that moment, ask your divine being to take you to any one of these wonderful temples so that you can receive this wisdom, not from us, from the lips of the masters. Then when you come back, you bring back all of those memories. You remember exactly what you heard, what you experienced. This is what you can do. So we're talking about the ethereal body. We know that this ethereal body is made of 4 ethers. We know that these 4 ethers regulate the chemical, the biological, reproductive processes of the body. And we also know that they allow us in the perception of light, heat, color, and sound, and also in the superior perceptions, the intellectual thinking processes. They help us with this. And we also learned thus far that when something happens to that ethereal body, as a consequence, based on the flow of the ray of creation, we are going to see the effect in the ethereal body crystallized in the physicality. And this is the entity of nature. This is the Ens Naturae. When the ethereal body is weakened, when your vitality is disrupted, when the tattvas fall out of balance within your physicality, we will get sick. Remember, the tattvas are vibrations of the ether. And these vibrations of the ether, different vibrations, result in different elements. So we have tattvas that condense as the element of water. Tattvas that condense as the element of earth, of air, of fire. And we know that all of those exist within our physicality. So what is this telling us? This tells us that as a humanoid, as a human being, we are not just a physical blob walking on this earth. We are multi-layered. There is an aspect of us that exists in this 3rd dimension, which is this dense substance. There is an aspect of us that exists within the 4th dimension, that is the ethereal body. And there is an aspect of us that roams within the 5th dimension of nature. In the lower realm of the 5th dimension, we find the astral plane, and in the higher realm of the 5th dimension, we find the mental plane, where all of our thoughts and thought forms condense and exists. The Ens Naturae, the entity of nature, tells us that illnesses are caused by imbalances or disturbances within the organism and our energetic structure. And there are external influences that can affect the organism. For example, there can be environmental conditions. Environmental conditions, the poor quality of the air, the poor quality of the water, bad food, excessive noise, disharmonious circumstances, all of these things, they create imbalances of energy. There's also the effect of planetary forces. There is also the effect of the elementals of nature. All of these have an influence within the organism. So when it comes to these external influences, if we have a psychological trainer, like the one that we are seeing here on the screen, notice that his head is covered in snakes that are symbols of temptation. We know that he is vermilion red because it is a vehicle to enable you to reach the highest degree of spirituality. You know that this is it because one leg is black, one leg is white, indicating that there is a sinister path and that there is a path of righteousness. Well, if we continue falling victim of every temptation, if we continue reacting to everything that is happening in our environment, if we continue trying to want to control everything to happen around us, we're going to end up like the character with that spear in his eye. Notice that it is affecting that left eye. And with the eyes being the windows of the soul, it is affecting that point where we can see reception, wisdom that comes in to nourish our consciousness. We continue distracted with the external circumstances. Our vitality continues to be drained. Our creative sexual energies continue going in the wrong directions, and that imbalance results in a weakened ethereal body, a weakened physicality, and we become more and more prone to becoming ill. But in our ethereal body, something interesting happens. In our physicality, we have an organ that is the seat, the foundation of the ethereal body. That organ is the spleen. And the spleen, during the day, is responsible for capturing, absorbing, apprehending some subtle solar rays. It will collect this subtle solar energy, the sun, as that radiant emanation of that Christic light, and will use that subtle energy to distribute it throughout the body. During the day, those subtle rays are accumulated on the spleen, and at night, when the physical body is sleeping and the astral body leaves and goes up to the fifth dimension and you're out there in your dreams, at that moment, the ethereal body is responsible of taking that energy and distributing it throughout the body. Every energetic center starts receiving of that energy. And with that energy, the ethereal body helps restore, regenerate, recover the physical body, and it helps the body regain its balance. What does that tell us? It tells us that if we work in a closed building where there is no sunlight and we don't have an opportunity to go outside for a walk, for a brisk walk, that we can expose ourselves just out to the open space to receive that sun, well, eventually we will start going to sleep at night, waking up the next morning, and see that the quality of our sleep is very poor. If you track your sleep quality, you will see that quality in the low 60s, in the 50s, and you will wake up tired, spent, with no energy left. Eventually, that will result in some kind of illness. Because these solar energies, they are the vital principle of everything that exists. They penetrate into our body through the spleen. And again, the ethereal body takes that energy and uses it to help recover, regenerate. On top of that, our physical body also contains atomic ancestral influences. The chakras of the knees. If you have ever been scared and you have felt that those knees have started shaking, it is because those chakras, the moment that you feared for your life, that you were scared, those chakras, energetically, they went out of balance. Those chakras of the knees, those are chakras that are linked to all of those ancestral inheritances that you have received. And within your biological constitution, the zoosperm, the spermatozoon that exists within us, well, it is of a sevenfold constitution. We find within our own seminal waters the biological and the psychic inheritance of our parents. And we tell you this because in the Buddhist tradition, one of the teachings that has impacted me the most is this concept that we do not live for this life, that we live for the next one. Every thought, every action, every sentiment, we must strive to make it the possible best. Because knowing that within our constitution, we carry this thing where we see our biological and psychic inheritance, the better quality we give to our creative waters, the better quality we're giving to those who come after us, and eventually, not only to our children, but to ourselves as we later on become once again children of our children. Friends, we share this with you because the body is an energetic system. Our health depends on this etheric integrity, of these four ethers being operating harmoniously, of the elements within us just operating harmoniously, of us making use of our creative waters in a way that is edifying and dignifying to the consciousness. And so, right action, right thought, and right sentiment, they are of tremendous, vital importance. Now, we're speaking about the ethereal body, but we would like to mention, what about people who are suffering from some mental disease? In the book, The Occult, the treatise, the esoteric treatise of occult magic and practical medicine, this book, Samael shares with us some remedies for people who suffer from a diseased mental body. We have already learned about these values that we are given called the Bodbin Caldenos. And these Bodbin Caldenos are values that we receive, and they are attributed to each one of the three brains in our physicality. For the motor, sexual, instinctive, for the emotional brain, and for the intellectual brain. And in a past lecture, back when we were in the antechamber, we learned that we must keep those three brains in balance. As a matter of fact, back then Samael said, when we die, we start dying in thirds. We affect our intellectual center in such a way that it creates an imbalance and it affects the emotional and the motor, sexual, instinctive center. If we abuse of our physicality, we also affect the intellectual brain and the emotional brain. If we are constantly suffering, if we are emotional parasites, if we are emotional that imbalance in the emotional brain affects the intellect, and it affects the motor, sexual, instinctive stuff too. You see? So, when we abuse of those values of the intellect, and the intellect starts misfiring because our mental body starts being affected. Well, Samael, the great masters, in their infinite kindness and compassion, they give us some remedies. One of those remedies that they give us is that for someone who has a diseased mental body, they benefit tremendously from the aura, the auric emanations on the consciousness of an innocent child, a little baby, toddler, as they sleep, provided that it is safe to do so. When somebody who is suffering from a diseased mental body, if they have the opportunity to sleep next to one of these babies, next to one of these children, receive those vibrations from that pure consciousness that they emanate through that aura, well, that is a panacea for them. It brings them tremendous degree of comfort. Another good thing that we can do is take the kernels of corn, and after they have dried up, you can dry them up in the sunlight. You can grind them, and you can take those ground kernels of corn, and you can sprinkle them over hot embers, like that hot charcoal that you would use to burn resin incense. Those hot embers, you sprinkle the ground corn, and the smoke that comes from that toasted corn, it brings a tremendous degree of healing into those mental bodies. It makes the person feel automatically better. And Samael says, because our body is constantly involved in these biochemical processes, it is of good benefit to keep the stomach, to keep the intestines free of gas. Because those gaseous substances, well, they start making their way back into the bloodstream. The blood is the vehicle of the consciousness, and then we start moving other substances that start creating an effect within the body itself. The last thing that he shares with us is the use of castor oil. And he says castor oil is highly recommended for the mentally ill and should be applied daily to the head. So Samael, in his writings on occult medicine and practical magic, he shares with us some of these so that we can help not only bring some healing into our many sufferings, but to those people we love, to those people who are in need. We can share this and help alleviate their suffering as well. So this is the entity of nature. As you can see, imbalances always result in complications. But then we have this next thing called the entity of God, the Ens DEI. And if the Ens Naturae, the entity of nature, is the effect of an imbalance within these energetic sources in nature, the Ens DEI is the result of an imbalance, of a disharmony with the law, with the great law. These are imbalances that propagate, effects that we create in our lives and in the lives of others. Every time that we create these imbalances, they irradiate and they eventually come back to their source of origin. So these imbalances eventually come back to us, and when they come back to us, the law provides for that to be karma. Helena Blavatsky, she says, infallible karma that adjusts the effect to the cause on the physical, the mental, and the spiritual planes of the being, as well as none to the smallest, from cosmic disturbance to the movement of our hands, and just as like produces like. We get back exactly what we give. This cosmic law of karma adjusts every effect to its cause, and it operates in all planes because the flow of the ray of creation cannot be stopped. Anything that is applied karmically at the mental plane eventually goes into the astral and to the ethereal and to the physical. Anything that is applied karmically in the astral plane goes in the astral, the ethereal, and the physical. Karmic on the ethereal goes into the physical body as well. So this law of karma adjusts every effect to its cause. And we spoke a little bit about this before. Because the ego crystallizes as disease. Every human defect is a poison to the organism, and specific defects will materialize directly as distinct illnesses. For example, if we decide to abandon anything and everything that has to do with spirituality and divinity, if there is no impulse of reunion within ourselves, reunion of the consciousness back to its source, to the innermost, well, we fall into the space of being materialistic. And eventually we become so materialistic that we can fall into the space of being atheists. In a future life, these defects of atheism and materialism, they crystallize as tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is the image that you see on the top left of your screen. Knowing that tuberculosis is an illness of the lungs, because we choose to negate the source of the breath of life, eventually, that breath of life is going to be denied to us. Same thing happens with cancer. If we look, for example, on the bottom left corner, there are many different types of cancer. We know that. But when we abuse of our sexual creative energies, which is the one type of energy that can be used for the creation, the harmonious creation of superior existential bodies, the harmonious creation of faculties, abilities, powers, virtues, laws, all of these things that make up the solar soul. The harmonious use of these energies for the harmonious elimination of our psychological aggregates through the intervention of our Divine Mother. If we are abusing of that energy, well, in a future life, we predispose ourselves for our body to not know what to do with that creative energy. And then the use goes out of control, which is exactly what cancer is. Cellular growth that manifests in a way that is exaggerated, out of control. If in this life we are extremely selfish, that extreme selfishness opens the door for you to be able to receive an illness like malaria. Malaria is very interesting. Looking at the bottom of the screen, that second image, that word malaria comes from an Italian root word that means bad air. Mala aria, bad air. And it was once thought, before they realized that mosquitoes are a vector that carries this type of a agent that generates malaria. It was once thought to be caused by foul air, by air that was contaminated with some kind of poison, a poison that produced some intermittent and remittent fever. The fact is that when you are predisposed to experience malaria, the pain in the body, the debilitating effects, the way that it harms you is tremendous. And we spoke about sexual misconduct when we spoke about cancer. But that sexual misconduct has also other consequences. Sexual misconduct leads us into the space of being prone to something called diphtheria. And diphtheria is a condition that affects the mucous membranes of the nose and the throat. This particular condition creates like a layer of a thick gray or a blackish membrane that affects your breathing. And because it happens back there in the throat, it tempers with the quality of your creative word. Not only that creative word becomes weaker, becomes ineffective. This word diphtheria, it comes from a Greek root word that means prepared hide, like leather. So that material that is like really thick can be really coarse. Okay. So notice what this does to the throat. And it affects your ability to create with the power of the word. This is what happens with the Ens DEI. If we are not in harmony with the great law, that this harmony will enable the manifestation of these many other inferior aspects that we have already created, that we call psychological aggregates, defects, or egos. And all of these egos, they will crystallize as some kind of illness. But the law is not tyrannical. There is a perfect balance between mercy and justice. And thus, even though we know that karma can manifest physically, because we see it all the time, and we know that it manifests internally as well, Samael tells us, these things that we're experiencing here in the physical plane, this is 1,000 times easier than anything that you would experience karmically in the inferior layers of the tritocosmos, which are the spheres of the Averno, the spheres of hell. So regardless of how bad you think things are here, know for a fact that they are really not that bad. They can always get worse. And so, this karma is negotiable. We have already learned that there's some karma that is non-negotiable. We already know that. That is called karma duro. Karma duro is that karma that is already being applied. Once you have it, you have to continue and pay it. And there's also some actions that, so any crimes that we may commit against the Holy Spirit, those are not negotiable. There's a karma for that. We have to pay for those. But the other karma, everything else is negotiable. And Samael teaches us that a higher law will always supersede an inferior law. A higher law will always cancel an inferior one. And there's no higher law than love and service. Anything that has to do with kindness, compassion, service, seeking for the benefit, the well-being of others, that helps pay off a tremendous amount of karma. And so what is it that Samael tells us in terms of maintaining this harmony? He says, when the innermost and the soul, that soul, our consciousness, obey the law, the result is happiness and perfect health. If we speak in terms of affinity, and your consciousness becomes one with your being, you cannot get sick. You will, by definition, be existing in the highest degree of happiness. Once your being fuses with its own being, the Father of our Father, what is known as the real being, that degree of happiness is even greater. Even less harm can ever come to you. And we say ever metaphorically because we know that those are realms that exist beyond time, beyond the eternity. So when our consciousness unites with the being, karma can be transcended. Any disease, any illness, they lose all of their causes and we become immune to them. So our goal, as we exist here and now, is to exist in harmony with our being, to exist in harmony with our individual and particular Glorian. This is harmony between the consciousness, our innermost, and the Father of our innermost, which, as a matter of fact, is our real being. The Glorian is the Father of our Father. And so we must always seek to exercise the will of our being. The great master of all masters gives us an example of this, because even him, a great master that has resurrected 7 times, does this. And he does this. We can find this in the book of Luke, chapter 22, verse 42. When he is praying up there, the Mount of Olives, and he is saying, Father, if it is your will, take away this cup from me. But let it not be my will. Let it be your will. Friends, what this is saying is that every curse word that we verbalize, every ill will that we throw upon other people, every inferior desire, every bad thing that we wish upon someone, these are all actions of black magic. Every time that we are empowering our defects to go out and do as they wish, we are creating interference with the flow of the great law. Sometimes you see somebody who is suffering and you want to immediately jump in, and if you know a little bit about magic, you want to go and burn some sage, you want to do this, you want to do that, and you want to make them better, you want to take away their suffering. I mean, that is very humble, but we make lots of mistakes just based on good intentions. Sometimes people are just suffering the consequences of their karma, of karmas that are not negotiable. And when we get there and we want to get rid of it, fix it, we are creating interference. And how is it that the law is applying, giving everyone what everyone deserves? So this is serious. Every action, every thought, every sentiment should be according to the will of our innermost. And you may think, black magic, that's exaggerated. All of these things manifest at different degrees of manifestation. And there are acts of black magic that are exceedingly subtle, and there are others that are coarse, gross, and blatantly clear that they are tenebrous acts. It is all between two extremes. So we must seek to follow the example of the master of all masters. Let it not be my will. Let it be your will. And that should be true in our daily lives, in our interactions with others, in our works of magic, and in our invocations of theurgy. We always ask that everything will manifest according to the will of the law. And when it manifests, we are infinitely grateful. And when it does not, we offer our reverence and we accept it with no complaints. And this is how we can start setting up that deep harmony with our being. And that harmony carries into our real being. And that ultimate, unobstructed, harmonious existence with our Glorian will spare us from every possible illness. So let's remember, illnesses and diseases, they are all of them layered. All of these karmic illnesses, they can affect us in this life because of the stuff from past lives. And what we're adding now in this life will definitely affect us in one of the future ones. So before we are trying to think about just healing and just alleviate, okay, let's also think about prevention. How is it that we can prevent our future lives from getting more complicated, from adding suffering to our existence? Well, we have to go beyond any concept of quote-unquote moral transformation, because morality today is way different than what it was 15 years ago. We have to start thinking in terms of a radical internal transformation, where we exist in alignment with the divine law. That way, we can maintain energetic, biological balance. That way, we can avoid karmic, and if you choose to think in terms of morality, quote-unquote moral consequences later, and see the application of the Ens DEI, which is the entity of God. So dear friends, this is what we wanted to share with you today. These have been the 5 causes of illness. Thank you everyone so much for joining us this evening. May all beings be happy.